It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robyn Vincent. Last week, the state opened an investigation into DTE Energy and Consumers Energy. The companies have until the end of August to explain their response during the 4th of July weekend. That was when 500,000 people in Michigan lost power, some of them for 5 days in 90-degree heat. In Farmington Hills, at a senior living home, where some residents rely on oxygen machines, staff were dressing people in the dark. So, as we wait for the reports from the utilities, the question we want to put to you today is, what does accountability actually look like? We're opening up the phone lines for this. Give us a call, 313-577-1019. We want to hear from you on this. My guest is Theresa Rich, the mayor of Farmington Hills, and we want her thoughts on what accountability should look like too. Mayor Rich, welcome.
Thank you, Robyn. Delighted to be here this morning.
Mayor, I want to start with that senior home in your city, if we could. I realize Michigan storms happen every summer, not just summer, I should say, actually. But somewhere in there, a decision gets made about how quickly a building with people on oxygen get its power back. As mayor, how did you respond to the outage?
So my first thing is staying connected with our DTE contact. And so, it is looking at what is the outage, what is the extent of it, and also staying connected with our public safety. That really is the key thing, because in Farmington Hills with this particular storm, we had 38 power lines go down, 38. And so when a power line goes down, it can't just be left alone. A power line needs to have somebody essentially babysitting it. And normally that's public safety. So our firefighters are called in to do that until DTE brings one of their people to do that same until the power is repaired. And so what that meant is we had first responders that were taken off the street. That limits emergency coverage. And during that same outage, we had 14 heat-related emergencies. One of the outages was at our senior activity center. And that senior activity center is usually used as one of our cooling centers. So that took a cooling center offline for us. Now, we do have a backup at our fire station, but that did cause an issue there. And it also, so what does that mean? It's not just where the outage is, Robyn. So when our firefighters need to be sent to watch over a power line because we don't want anybody going bzzz,
right. Yes.
And getting hurt or worse.
People have died from this. Absolutely.
Correct. Absolutely. And so we need to make sure people stay safe. But when that happens and we have limited coverage, then we need to rely on the next city. We need to also pay overtime, so we need to call more firefighters in, and we also need to bring in our paid on call.
So, Mayor Rich, you're painting a picture here of quite the emergency, quite the mess, really, a logistical mess. I'm wondering two things. How long did it take for DTE to send its crews in so that you could relieve your emergency personnel from watching over these downlines? I'll ask you that first.
I do not have that data. And so what our plan is to do an after-action review from all of it. And so I know that the Public Service Commission has asked DTE and Consumers and I&M to come back with a report by the 27th of August.
Right.
And so once that happens, in the meantime, we're going to be understanding impact on our city And then we are going to ask DTE to come in to council in September, late September probably.
Do you know if you did have to rely on other cities then for support or assistance during this emergency?
I am told that we were forced to rely on mutual aid. And that's a very common thing, by the way, across cities. And so when something happens in a neighboring city, we provide mutual aid as needed.
I mean, I'm guessing people call you, the mayor, when the power goes out. And the honest answer is that you don't own the wires, you don't set the rates, and you can't make a crew show up.
Right.
What's it like to be the person that people call about a thing you can't really fix?
Literally powerless, right?
Ooh.
But here's what I do have is I do have voice. And so the people of Farmington Hills hired me to be their voice when they don't have one. And so I affirmatively asked to receive stories from our residents. I affirmatively went to our senior activity center last week and said, okay, I'm going to be here for the next little while at this back table. Come tell me what happened to you. I reached out and said, send me your receipts, send me your stories. And that was when the power was starting to be restored. And that was good news, right? But we had a whole square mile where they had been out for days. Mm. People had thrown out everything in their refrigerator and freezer, gone to buy more food to replace if they could, because, with the timing, people who are on SNAP filled their fridge, and now they have no money. And so they refilled, and don't you know, we had a 5-minute heavy rainstorm that knocked out, a tree came down, knocked out a power line, took out that whole square mile. And that happened at 10:10, and I can assure you by 10:12 p.m., my phone was ringing. So what can I do? I can go to the Public Service Commission and say this is not okay.
Which is what you did.
Exactly.
I want to turn to a caller that we have on the line. It's Kristen from Detroit. Kristen, thank you for calling the Metro. What's on your mind?
Well, I'm just curious if there's anything that can be done at the municipal level, like especially when we're talking about older folks that require oxygen and stuff like this. Those places cost like what, $10,000-$15,000 a month for residents. Why shouldn't they be required to have emergency generators? Number one. Number two, DTE I have friends all across the city that show me, like, they're on Facebook and whatever, showing like pieces of what covers the wires just falling off and having like live wires in the trees, and like they can't get anybody to come out.
Sure. Kristen, thank you. You're speaking to the safety concerns on multiple levels that I think folks want some answers to. Thank you so much for calling. Mayor Rich, why, or I guess I should ask you, do you have the ability as a mayor to require senior homes to have backup generators? Where should this responsibility fall?
Right. That is an excellent question. So I want to answer in two segments. So let's first talk about the ability to provide generators. I understand that there is some limited availability during an emergency to get generators to people who are medically dependent. And I understand that there's a form that needs to be filled out. When I was at the Public Services Commission meeting last week, one of the staffers came by and gave me some information on that I'm going to be sharing out so that we can have people apply so that they are known to be in need. But the other piece is I had a call from a daughter whose mom is in one of our independent living areas, but largely bedbound. And so she said they were told that they could feel free to get their own generator to put outside her room And that's bizarre.
How in the world is that going to happen?
Exactly. And so that's one that I'm trying to do get some follow-up done on. But I think that to Kristen's specific question, for people who are in a facility, and I believe this is a state licensing issue, so this would be to talk to our legislators about this when they get back from their summer recess, about, okay, what are the requirements? And she's right. People are paying thousands and thousands of dollars to be in these facilities, or paying for their loved ones to be in these facilities. Shouldn't a generator be a requirement?
So what you're saying is that the way for a policy like that to really have some teeth, it would need to be something at the state level. We're talking about a state law. That's really where we could have some accountability here and some regulations in place. I want to put DTE's side to you, because the Metro contacted DTE Energy about its response during the 4th of July outages. And in an emailed statement, a representative said they understand people's frustrations. They said they're committed to strengthening reliability, restoring power as safely and quickly as possible, and communicating clearly with customers during severe weather events. The DTE spokesperson also said more than 4,000 DTE and contract personnel worked around the clock to restore power. They said they contacted more than 20,000 senior and low-income customers. They said they conducted wellness checks, and they distributed more than 175 generators. Quite a few things here I just threw at you, Mayor. I'm wondering, to the best of your knowledge, did DTE conduct wellness checks or distribute generators in your community?
I don't have the data on that yet, so that's going to be part of the after action review. But 175 generators seems to me to be minuscule in comparison to probable need. And so I'm not here to bash DTE.
Sure.
I'm here to stand up for my residents.
I mean, you as other people, I gather, just want to see things get better.
Right. So, a few years ago, we had DTE come to a council study session and tell us what are they doing. And there was one neighborhood in particular in the southeast side of town that it seemed like every time, there didn't even have to be bad weather. This neighborhood went down. And they said it was the trees. And so we had them come in. We held their feet to the fire. They did a lot of tree work in that part of town. And interestingly, when I went to our activity center last week, one of the people who actually lives in that area said, well, I don't know about the rest of Farmington Hills, but we were fine. And that's great. But what about the rest of all of the cities? And so I don't think they're doing a sufficient job with the trees. If they were doing a sufficient job with the trees, we wouldn't have had 38 downed power lines from one storm.
So in your eyes, this is about being much more proactive.
Sure.
Last week, we had the head of the Michigan Public Service Commission on the show, Dan Scripps, and I asked him about the outages. Here's part of what he had to say.
I think there were a lot of problems in the response in the most recent storm event. It did take a long time. It took a long time for them to get set up.
Okay, and so later he followed up with this.
There were a number of problems with the restoration estimates. They were off, and sometimes significantly, and just not the level of communication that you'd expect from a utility to its customers either.
Again, that's Dan Scripps, head of the Michigan Public Service Commission, which is investigating the utilities. I saw you nodding your head just a moment ago, Mayor Rich. So do his words adequately capture what your residents experienced?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We didn't know when power was going to be restored. And okay, let's also put a little balance in this, though. With this particular storm, we had extraordinarily hot weather going on, and we continued to have thunderstorms over the course of the weekend. And so just like we're trying to make sure our residents stay safe, we totally appreciate that DTE's people need to be able to come home at the end of a workday, and they need to stay safe too. And so what does that mean? That means that if there's a thunderstorm going on, they can't be out there fixing lines. And we know that if we have extraordinary heat, then people need to take breaks more often. So I understand and appreciate that. But at the same time, if they're not going to be able to deliver information adequately, then at the end of the day, how are they going to be able to compensate people for their losses? And so my understanding is after 96 hours out, a homeowner can get, or a DTE
resident,
sure. A client can get $42
per day.
Yes.
Right.
Going forward after 96 hours. Now, I have receipts from residents where just replacing a refrigerator for, the week, it's hundreds of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
In our senior activity center, we have now twice lost all the food for our Meals on Wheels and Congregate Meals program.
I mean, this is devastating for people when we think about the cost of groceries right now. But this is not DTE's rule. I mean, how much of this do you put to the Public Service Commission or to the legislature to change this policy to ensure that people more reliably are compensated?
Well, isn't that what should happen? Right? So, and this was one of the last comments I made when I was at the Public Service Commission last week, is what I said is, so this was my last paragraph. I said, DTE came before us a couple of years ago and things improved. They slipped since. This is not okay. And today I'm asking for the commission to hold them accountable for response times, communication failures, and repeated infrastructure breakdowns. I'm asking for a defined process to identify our vulnerable residents to make sure that generators are provided. Because here's the reality. We as a municipality should not continue subsidizing the shortcomings of a critical utility. They get rate increases. We do not. So how many times are our taxpayers expected to pay for their electrical services?
It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robyn Vincent. My guest is Theresa Rich, Mayor of Farmington Hills. We're discussing what accountability should look like for DTE and Consumers Energy after the massive outages during 4th of July weekend. That's because the State Utility Commission just announced an investigation into how the utilities responded to those outages. And we want to hear from you. What do you think accountability should look like? 313-577-1019. So, Mayor, you've answered part of what I was wondering in terms of what you think accountability should look like. And that is, you want to see a concrete plan put forward by the utilities before the next storm of how they are going to prevent this kind of mayhem, this kind of loss, this kind of danger for your residents. Am I getting that right?
You are getting that right. Now, let's temper it with a little reality. It's not going to happen before the next storm. But I want to see a plan in place for which they are accountable. I want to see action. And I would like to see a serious conversation about burying lines. Now, again, to be fair, my home has power lines. They've been underground for the whole 30-some years that we've lived there. We still have power outages because the lines that feed in are overhead. And then the other thing is we need to make sure that critical other utilities are handled. So just last week, and I haven't had a chance to talk to the mayors on the other side of town, but a number of our Oakland County municipalities had to go to boiled water because a DTE substation failed.
You know what this has me wondering, Mayor Rich? I'm thinking about Ann Arbor right now because some residents there are trying to leave DTE and have the city run their power. Has Farmington Hills ever seriously studied leaving DTE?
Not to the best of my knowledge, but I think another thing that could, should, ought to be considered is is making sure that there are no barriers to residents wanting to do their own solar, do their own wind. Our city hall is on geothermal. And so we should find a way to encourage, if a resident wants to have those services, that there is nothing getting in the way of their being able to do that. And I understand that there are some limitations, but I am definitely not an expert on that.
I'm wondering about another potential form of accountability, Mayor, because DTE is asking for a $474 million rate increase right now. The company itself calls this a contested case with opportunity for intervener testimony, meaning outside parties can join it and they can argue. The Attorney General has already said she will, Dana Nessel. The decision comes in February. Is that a fight your city can join? What would that look like?
Don't know what would necessarily be in the way. If it is, so one thing to remember is that, yes, I am the mayor of the city, but it requires a vote of 4 of us to do anything. And so if it is the will of council to get engaged in that way, then we will. So as I said, we're going to try to have DTE in hopefully by the end of September. And then we have our annual council goal-setting session in October, and so this will be something that is on there. And frankly, DTE has been on our list in prior years to make sure that we are upping the communication and letting them know what our concerns are and getting our resident concerns addressed. And as I said, in the past, it was helpful.
Are you saying that this is an agenda item that you'd be willing to put forth?
Yes.
I want to end by thinking about something much bigger that is happening in this space right now when we think about energy. DTE says the data centers that are coming to Michigan will actually lower your residents' bills, that a giant new customer like a data center spreads the costs around. The company has promised no rate increase, 0 rate increases until 2028 if the first one in Saline Township opens on time. I'm going to invoke Attorney General Dana Nessel here one more time because she called that a ransom note. Mm-hmm. I realize you have no data centers in Farmington Hills. It's quite built out. It doesn't seem that there's a risk of that in Farmington Hills. What I'm wondering, though, where do you stand on that issue? I mean, do you see that as something that could potentially spread the costs around, or are you more on the side of Dana Nessel, who's saying that this is a ransom note?
It smells to me like a ransom note. I don't think that it's right to have other municipalities pressure a city to do what the utility is asking. This is probably going to come out wrong, but I'm going to say it anyway. It feels to me like Cinderella can go to the ball if she gets her chores done. It doesn't feel right. And I would not appreciate other municipalities trying to pressure us. And I don't see where I would be in favor of doing that to another city. That's just not right.
Theresa Rich is the mayor of Farmington Hills. Mayor Rich, thank you so much for joining me on the Metro today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robyn Vincent. Coming up, over the past several months, northern Michiganders have been hit with a series of extreme weather events. Next, we learn about how some are trying to adapt to the change and what we can potentially learn from that as well. Stay with us.